Imagine planning a party, sending out invitations, prepping the snacks, setting up the venue, and then the most important guest just ghosts you on the group chat. Welcome back to UK Political Insight, where today we're watching Keir Starmer experience what might be his biggest humiliation yet, and it's courtesy of Donald Trump, who's basically left a prime minister on read while the whole world watches. Good Morning Britain literally stopped their broadcast to deliver this delicious piece of diplomatic drama. And honestly, you couldn't script this level of awkwardness if you tried. So here's the situation. There's supposed to be this big, important meeting about peace in Ukraine happening tomorrow. European leaders are gathering, Starmer's hosting discussions at Downing Street. Everyone's trying to look statesmanlike and important. And they desperately want Trump there because, let's face it, America is kind of essential to any serious peace negotiations with Russia. Without Trump, this meeting has about as much clout as a book club trying to negotiate nuclear disarmament. You can have all the meetings you want, but if the person with actual leverage isn't in the room, you're basically just having an expensive chat. So Starmer and other European leaders have been on the phone with Trump, trying to convince him to join them. Picture that for a second. The Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, leader of what used to be a global superpower, having to ring up Donald Trump and essentially beg him to show up to a meeting. It's like being the kid in school whose party nobody wants to attend, so you're desperately offering extra party bags and promising your mom will order the good pizza. Except instead of pizza, it's world peace. And instead of showing up, Trump is giving them the diplomatic equivalent of, maybe, I'll see how I feel. Charlotte Hawkins opens Good Morning Britain with this absolute bombshell, asking Richard Geisford if it seems like Donald Trump is leaving the Prime Minister hanging. And Geisford, with what I imagine is barely concealed glee, confirms that yes, Trump is absolutely leaving Starmer twisting in the wind. The leaders had hoped to persuade Trump to join them tomorrow for talks, but Trump is not sounding entirely convinced. Not sounding entirely convinced is diplomatic speak for he's probably not coming and you all know it, but we're too polite to say it outright. Then they cut to Trump in the Oval Office, and this is where it gets really good. Trump says they would like us to attend the meeting in Europe if we think there's a good chance. If we think there's a good chance. He's treating this like a business investment. Is this meeting going to be worth my time? Will I get a return on investment? He continues, we don't want to waste a lot of time. We think it's negative. We want it to get settled. We want to save a lot of lives. Which sounds reasonable until you realize he's essentially saying, your meeting looks like a waste of my time, and I'm not interested unless you can prove it won't be. It's the political equivalent of saying, I'll come to your party if you can guarantee it won't be rubbish. Imagine the European leaders hearing that. They've organized this whole summit, coordinated schedules, prepared talking points, probably booked expensive hotel rooms, and Trump's sitting in the Oval Office going, yeah, I'm not sure this is worth my time. Let me know if you come up with anything actually useful. The disrespect is almost impressive in its casualness. But Trump is not done. He adds, I think we had some little disputes about people, and we're going to see how it turns out. Little disputes about people. What does that even mean? Is he talking about specific leaders? Is this about Starmer? Is Trump holding a grudge about something someone said or did? And then the killer line. Before we go to a meeting, we want to know some things. He's setting conditions. He's not just maybe going to show up. He wants information first. Guarantees, assurances. He's treating European leaders like they need to prove themselves worthy of his attendance. Think about what this means for Starmer. He's desperately trying to position himself as a serious player on the world stage, someone who can bring people together, facilitate important negotiations, be relevant in global affairs. And the President of the United States is publicly, on camera, in the Oval Office, saying he's not convinced Starmer's meeting is worth attending. That's not a diplomatic slight. That's a full-on public snub. That's Trump looking at the entire gathering of European leaders and saying, show me why I should bother. Geisford continues explaining that President Zelensky is revising the U.S. deal, trying to make it more palatable, more likely to get everyone's agreement. But he admits it's clear from what everyone is saying that there's still a lot of work to be done to get this over the line. Translation, this meeting tomorrow is probably going to be a bunch of European leaders sitting around without Trump, pretending they're making progress while everyone knows nothing substantive will happen without American involvement. Trump's press secretary then chips in to say her boss wants action, not words, which is rich coming from an administration that's done nothing but talk about Ukraine negotiations without actually achieving anything concrete yet. But it's also a direct dig at these European meetings. Trump's team is basically saying, you guys just talk and nothing happens. We're not interested in another talking shop. Whether that's fair or not, it's definitely how they see it, and they're not shy about saying so publicly. Later today, Geisford mentions, Starmer is hosting the Prime Minister of Belgium at Downing Street. Belgium has Russian funds locked up and is under pressure to release some frozen assets to help Ukraine. So while Trump is ghosting the main meeting, Starmer is reduced to having bilateral discussions about money with Belgium. It's like organizing a huge conference and then ending up just having coffee with one person who showed up out of pity. Don't get me wrong, discussing frozen Russian assets is important, but it's a far cry from the grand peace summit with Trump that was supposed to be happening. Zelensky, caught in the middle of all this, posted on X about how this week may bring news for all of us. He wrote that peace has no alternative, and the key questions are how to compel Russia to stop the killings and what will deter Russia from a third invasion. These are enormous, crucial questions, the kind of questions that need America at the table, that need Trump involved, because Russia isn't going to be compelled or deterred by European leaders having meetings that Trump won't even attend. And here's where it gets even more uncomfortable for Starmer. Trump said earlier in the week that Russia is, I believe, fine with the plan, but I'm not sure that Zelensky is fine with it. Trump is positioning himself as the one who understands both sides, who can bring them together, while subtly suggesting that Zelensky, the Ukrainian president who's been defending his country for years, might be the obstacle. It's a masterclass in Trump-style negotiation. Make yourself essential, make everyone else seem difficult or uncertain, and ensure that nothing happens without you in the room. Further discussions will be held at Downing Street on Saturday, but it's unlikely Trump will be in attendance. Unlikely. That's the polite way of saying he's definitely not coming. So Starmer will host his meeting, European leaders will show up, they'll have discussions, they'll issue statements about progress and continued cooperation, and everyone will know that it's essentially meaningless without American involvement. It's a gathering designed to look important that's been completely undermined by Trump's refusal to confirm attendance. The humiliation here is multi-layered. First, there's the obvious embarrassment of having the most important potential attendee publicly question whether your meeting is worth his time. Second, there's the fact that this is happening on live television, announced as an urgent update on Good Morning Britain, ensuring maximum public awareness of Starmer being snubbed by the American president. Third, there's the implication that Trump doesn't think Starmer or the European leaders can actually achieve anything meaningful, which is devastating for someone trying to establish themselves as a significant world leader. But the really painful part is that Trump is probably right. What exactly can this meeting achieve without American participation? Ukraine needs American military support, American intelligence, American diplomatic pressure on Russia. European nations can provide aid and support, but they can't replace what America brings to the table. Trump knows this, everyone knows this, and by refusing to commit to the meeting, Trump is making it completely obvious that he holds all the cards, and Starmer is just hoping for a seat at the table. This is what happens when you're desperate to be relevant on the world stage, but you don't actually have the leverage to demand attention. Starmer wants to be the statesman who helps negotiate peace in Ukraine, who brings world leaders together, who makes Britain matter again in international affairs. But the President of the United States is treating him like a junior partner, whose meetings are optional, whose invitations can be declined without consequence. It's a brutal reminder that Britain's influence has declined, and American presidents don't feel obligated to show up just because the Prime Minister asks nicely. The timing couldn't be worse for Starmer either. He's dealing with domestic problems, criticism over various policies, questions about labor's direction. A successful summit on Ukraine with Trump in attendance would have been a perfect distraction, a chance to look prime ministerial and important. Instead, he's getting publicly humiliated on breakfast television, with Trump essentially saying, "Thanks but no thanks, your meeting doesn't look worth my time." You can't buy that kind of embarrassment. And let's talk about the optics for a moment. Good Morning Britain halts their regular programming for an urgent update about Trump snubbing Starmer. That's how big this is. That's how much of a story it is that the Prime Minister has been left hanging by the American president. It's not buried in the political pages. It's not a footnote in the international news section. It's breaking news on breakfast television, ensuring millions of people having their morning tea and toast are now aware that Starmer couldn't convince Trump to show up to his meeting. Trump's team saying they want action, not words, is particularly cutting because it implies that European meetings are all talk and no substance. Whether you agree with that assessment or not, it's a devastating criticism of the diplomatic process that Starmer is trying to lead. Trump is positioning himself as the man of action, the deal maker, the person who gets things done, while implicitly suggesting that Starmer and his European colleagues just sit around talking without achieving anything real. The mention of little disputes about people is fascinating because it's so vague. What disputes? With whom? About what? Trump leaves it hanging there, creating uncertainty and speculation. Is he talking about specific leaders? Is this about Starmer? Is Trump holding a grudge about something someone said or did? And then the killer line. Before we go to a meeting, we want to know some things. He's setting conditions. He's not just maybe going to show up, he wants information first, guarantees, assurances. He's treating European leaders like they need to prove themselves worthy of his attendance. For Starmer, this is a nightmare scenario. He can't cancel the meeting now because that would look
even worse. He can't pretend it doesn't matter that Trump isn't coming because everyone knows it matters enormously. He can't even really criticize Trump for not attending because that would just draw more attention to the snub and potentially damage relations with America even further. He's stuck hosting a diminished meeting that everyone knows is less significant without Trump, while the whole country watches and wonders why the prime minister couldn't convince the American president to show up. This also raises questions about Britain's special relationship with America. That phrase politicians love to trot out whenever they want to pretend Britain still has unique influence in Washington. If we have such a special relationship, why is Trump treating Starmer's invitation like it's optional? Why is he publicly questioning whether the meeting is worth attending? The special relationship apparently doesn't extend to Trump feeling obligated to show up when Starmer asks. That's a sobering reality check about Britain's actual standing in the world. And spare a thought for all the civil servants and diplomats who've been working on this summit. They've been coordinating schedules, preparing briefing papers, arranging security, organizing logistics. They've probably spent weeks getting everything ready for this big, important meeting. And now Trump's sitting in the Oval Office casually saying, maybe I'll come if I think it's worth it. Probably not, though. All that work, all that preparation, and the person they most need in the room is treating it like an optional calendar event. The comparison to being ghosted is genuinely apt here. Starmer and the European leaders have been calling Trump, making their case, trying to persuade him to attend. And Trump's giving them the classic non-committal responses that anyone who's ever been ghosted will recognize. Maybe, we'll see, I'm not sure it's worth it, I need to know some things first. He's keeping them hanging on, not saying yes, not saying no, just maintaining maximum leverage while they desperately try to convince him. It's dating behavior applied to international relations, and it's absolutely humiliating for those on the receiving end. If this hasn't thoroughly convinced you that British politics is more entertaining than any reality show, I don't know what will. Subscribe to UK Political Insight because we're covering these spectacular disasters multiple times every single day, bringing you the news that makes you laugh, cry, and question everything about how our country is run. Smash that like button if you think Starmer just experienced his most embarrassing moment yet. Drop a comment telling me whether you think Trump will eventually show up or if he's going to leave Starmer hanging indefinitely. And hit those notifications because trust me, with the way things are going, there's going to be even more chaos coming very soon. Until next time, keep watching as our politicians provide endless entertainment through their spectacular failures on the world stage.